As you know, they've announced a few days ago that they're going to move a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico. I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States.
Donald Trump was campaigning like a man on a mission. His message? America was getting ripped off. Big time. Factories were closing, jobs were disappearing, and everything, from the shirt on your back to the phone in your hand, was made somewhere else. So he made a promise, a bold one. He said, we're going to bring jobs back. We're going to stop companies from leaving. We're going to make things in America again. And millions of people believed him, especially in places like Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, towns that had seen their local factories shut down one by one, slowly draining the life out of their communities. People weren't just voting for a candidate, they were voting for a comeback story. And for a moment, it actually felt possible. The plan was simple, at least on paper. If companies were offshoring jobs to save money, make it more expensive for them to do that. Tariffs were the weapon of choice. If you wanted to bring your products into the US but made them in China or Mexico, you'd pay a steep price. And the goal? Force companies like Ford, John Deere, GM, even tech manufacturers to bring their operations home. Trump's base loved it. Blue-collar workers felt seen. Farmers, factory workers, welders, truck drivers, people who'd been left behind by globalization, finally felt like someone was fighting for them. There was a real energy in the air, a sense of possibility. But here's the thing about pressure. It creates resistance. And American corporations? They didn't cave. They counterattacked. Let's talk about John Deere for a second. You know that green and yellow tractor that's basically a symbol of rural America? The same company that's been helping farmers for over a century? Well, while all eyes were on Washington, John Deere was quietly expanding its footprint in Monterrey, Mexico. And I'm not talking about a side operation. We're talking a massive, state-of-the-art facility. Full automation, lower labor costs, fewer regulations, and critically, no US tariffs. Why? Because they saw the writing on the wall. If the US was going to impose tariffs, they needed a plan B. And Mexico became the golden parachute. And it wasn't just Deere. Ford started shifting EV production out of Michigan and into Mexico and India. General Motors moved jobs to Brazil. Even Caterpillar, another American icon, was building more machines abroad than ever before. These companies weren't being defiant, they were being strategic. Now imagine this. You're a farmer in Iowa. You wake up before sunrise. Diesel prices are up, markets are volatile, but you do what you've always done, what your father and grandfather did. You go to work, you climb into your John Deere tractor, that same green and yellow machine that's been a part of your life longer than you've been driving. The one you financed for years because it was reliable, because it was American, because that name meant something. And then the news breaks. John Deere is moving production out of the US. Not because they're failing, not because they're under threat, but because they ran the numbers and Mexico was cheaper. Just like that, the company that built its empire off your loyalty, off your land, is packing up and heading south of the border. You feel betrayed, not just as a customer, but as an American. And you're not alone. From the plains of Nebraska to the hills of Missouri, farmers started speaking out, protesting. Some even made viral videos of themselves torching their Deere caps and peeling the logos off their equipment. One guy, fifth-generation farmer, spray-painted over the Deere badge on his $400,000 combine and posted it with the caption, "Not my tractor anymore." When Deere left, it didn't just take jobs, it took trust. And trust, once broken, doesn't come back easily. People felt like the rug had been pulled out from under them again. First it was NAFTA in the 90s, then the financial crash, and now this, another promise, another icon, walking away without looking back. And so in small towns all across the Midwest, something changed. People stopped just being customers. They became critics, activists. They started asking, who's next? Who else is going to leave? Because if John Deere, John freaking Deere, can abandon the American farmer, what hope is there for the rest of them? This wasn't just economic fallout. This was a cultural earthquake. And its aftershocks are still being felt in every empty factory, every foreclosed farm. Now here's where it gets really messy. Trump's tariffs were supposed to bring back jobs. Instead, the opposite happened. Factories closed, prices went up, and the supply chains, they got even more tangled. Let's break it down. Manufacturing output actually declined. Yup. Despite all the tough talk, U.S. manufacturing dropped by over 5% between 2020 and 2026. Consumer prices soared. Cars, washing machines, electronics, they all got more expensive. Not because companies were greedy, but because materials cost more. That's how tariffs work. Small businesses suffered. A little machine shop in Ohio that relied on imported parts, suddenly their costs exploded. They couldn't compete. Farmers took a huge hit. China retaliated with their own tariffs, especially on soybeans and pork. That meant fewer exports, lower prices, and a lot of American farmers drowning in debt. There was this moment in 2025 when Ford announced the closure of a major plant in Michigan. The company had been there for over 60 years. Generations had worked there. Families built their entire lives around that paycheck. And when it shut down, there wasn't even a mention of America in the press release. No apology, no recognition of the community that helped build the company. Just a sterile statement. We are investing in global flexibility. Global flexibility. That was code for, we're not tied to any country anymore. We go where the margins are. It was a wake-up call. For decades, Americans thought of these corporations as part of the national fabric, as loyal, patriotic, ours. But what the trade war exposed, brutally and publicly, was that they aren't ours. There's a guy named Dave from Indiana, worked for Caterpillar for 28 years. He used to weld hydraulic lines. Hard work, but he was proud of it. Sent 2 kids to college, bought a house, coached Little League. Then one day, HR handed him a packet and said his job was moving to Mexico. That was it. No retirement party, no offer to relocate, just a handshake and a severance check. I gave them my back, my hands, my life, Dave said, and they just disappeared. That's not just a layoff. That's a broken contract. So, what went wrong? It wasn't just the policy. It was the illusion behind the policy. The belief that you could fix decades of offshoring and economic erosion with a few tariffs and some tough talk. Trump believed that if you hit corporations hard enough, financially, politically, maybe even emotionally, they'd suddenly rediscover a sense of patriotism, that they'd come running back, flags in hand, ready to rebuild what they left behind. But corporations don't feel shame. They don't feel guilt. They don't respond to speeches. Because at the end of the day, they're not people. They're systems, engines built to generate profit and nothing more. Tariffs didn't bring jobs back. They raised costs, created friction, and pushed companies to look even harder for cheaper alternatives. Instead of rethinking globalization, corporations doubled down on it. New partnerships with Vietnam, India, Mexico, automated factories with skeleton crews, global supply chains that stretch further and move faster than ever before. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You can't tariff loyalty. You can't legislate ethics into a spreadsheet. And you definitely can't strong-arm a multinational conglomerate into acting like it's your neighbor. Nationalism might win elections, but it doesn't control the market. And trying to force it? Well, that only accelerated the very thing it was supposed to stop. We didn't reverse the offshoring trend. We put it on the steroids. And now we're standing in the wreckage of that promise. The trade war that was supposed to save American manufacturing ended up becoming a smokescreen. A patriotic mirage that hid a much colder truth. That while we were rallying around the flag, corporate America was quietly redrawing the map. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was methodical, quiet, strategic. A slow-motion corporate secession from the American worker. And when the dust settled, what was left? Small towns with shuttered plants, skilled workers forced into gig jobs, farmers crushed by foreign tariffs, and middle-class families watching their American dream dissolve into nostalgia. Because when push came to shove, corporations didn't stand and fight for America. They left, they adapted, they optimized, they won. And the rest of us? we're still here, still waiting for that great American comeback we were promised, still hoping that one day the system might remember who it was supposed to serve. But until then, we're just living with the cost of false hope,